Lead Well, Live Whole, the podcast where leadership meets life. Your host, Michael Sirmon, is here to help you rise above the noise, lead with purpose, and live with clarity. Let's get to it.
Welcome back, my friends, to the Lead Well, Live Whole podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sirmon, and I want to thank you for tuning in again. If you've been tracking with us so far, we've talked about servant leadership, the power of self-leadership, and building resilience when the storms of leadership hit hard. But today, we need to talk about something that doesn't always make the headlines, but it absolutely determines the outcome. Something that quietly erodes trust, undermines teams, and eats away at influence like rust under paint. Today, we're going to talk about the cost of inconsistency. But what is leadership inconsistency? It's not just showing up late to a meeting or forgetting to return a phone call. Inconsistency is when your actions don't match your words, when your values shift depending upon who's in the room or what deadline is coming up, when your leadership is emotionally unpredictable or absent. Inconsistency, it's the silent killer of credibility. It doesn't always shout, but your team feels it. Your family feels it. And over time, it creates a culture of confusion, guardedness, and quiet withdrawal. When people don't know which version of you is going to show up today, they stop leaning in. They stop trusting. And eventually, they stop following you. But let's talk about the price tag of inconsistent leadership. And make no mistake, it is costing you something. Trust erodes slowly but surely. Expectations become unclear because nobody knows the standards. The team either disengages or they operate out of fear instead of confidence. And your reputation, it begins to fracture. Personally, there was a season in my life where my leadership looked polished. From the outside, everything was going well. The meetings were productive. We were hitting the goals. My words were strong. But my follow-through, inconsistent, weak, and the people could feel it even when I couldn't see it. And it wasn't until I got some feedback and really took a hard look in the mirror that I realized being occasionally excellent doesn't make up for being consistently unstable. Think back in your own career and your own life. Think back to the leaders you've had and the meetings that you've been in. How many times did you walk into a meeting not necessarily thinking about what you were going to get out of the meeting or what you were going to contribute to the solution, but your whole thought was, man, I hope this doesn't go like the last meeting went, right? Because you didn't really understand what was expected as you were going in, or you didn't know who was going to be running it, right? It may be the same person in name and face, but you never knew what mood they were going to be in. I remember I started work at a company, and I hadn't been there very long, and I came in as a materials supervisor. Second day on the job, the entire materials team got called into a meeting. Our director was upset because we're missing shipments to customers, and we're missing shipments because the suppliers were late. So he asked a couple questions about the suppliers, and then just started cussing every one of us out in the room. And then after about 15 minutes of ranting, he just stopped, pointed at me and another man, and he said, "You two, you will be in Chicago tomorrow to get me these answers." And then he turned around and walked out of the room. He didn't know me from Jack, and I had no idea anything about the company as far as how to get to Chicago, even what I was supposed to talk to the customer about, right? So we all left the room. Nobody had planned to do anything other than, hey, I was supposed to get in Chicago. I asked the other gentleman that had been pointed out, and he said, I have no idea either. He said, I'm a scheduler. I have nothing to do with suppliers. So I walked outside and I found the director. He had taken off for a walk around a path and he was coming back and I said, hey, just curious. Do we have credit cards? Do we have a travel plan? Is there someone in particular that we're supposed to talk to? Are you sure that I'm the guy that you want to go? And he looked and he started laughing. He said, look, that was all for show. He said, I don't expect you to go to Chicago. He said, I just needed somebody to understand that this was serious and we needed to take action. Now, all I walked away from that interaction with was the knowledge that I really couldn't trust his communication. I couldn't trust his guidance. I couldn't trust that he even knew what he wanted. And now eventually I went on and I found out that that was 100% true, that I couldn't trust his guidance. Uh, in fact, I remember there was a time, there was one night that I get a request that he needed some reports by that night because he had a meeting first thing in the morning. So I rallied the team. We stayed late. We got everything pulled together, and we worked till about 9 o'clock that night. I sent the reports to him, and then the next morning I did my normal, and I followed up and I asked, hey, we got the reports to you. We think that's what you were asking for. We never got any feedback. Can you tell us if that worked for what you needed so we'll know in the future what to provide you? And this, by the way, this is, by the time I found him, it was afternoon the next day. And he said, oh, I haven't even looked at him yet. And so I thought you needed him for a meeting this morning at 8 o'clock. And he said, I don't know what meeting you're talking about. So the next time I got a request for the team to stay late, and I started realizing that it's when he was irritated or when he needed to reinforce his authority, that he would put these asinine requests on people and want them to sacrifice their personal time or their processes or their rhythm or whatever it would be, just so that he could be in charge. And so the next time I got the request from him, I said, well, you need it by when? He said, I need it by 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, well, the team will be here at 7 in the morning. We'll get it done. We'll have it to you by 8. And he said, well, I know I need it tonight. I said, are you going to look at it tonight? He said, probably not. And I said, then we'll come in at 7 o'clock in the morning and we'll get the report for you. And he said, well, I'm in charge. So I absolutely know that you're in charge. But I also know that you don't need the report tonight. The teams have families. They have commitments. They're going to go take care of their stuff. And then we will have it to you by the time you need it. In fact, we'll have it to you by 7:45. You and I, we can review it before the meeting. And he's like, fine, that'll work. So the next morning, the team comes in. We get the reports done. I get them to him. I walk up to his office to see if we could review the files, and he's not there. I find his receptionist or his assistant, and I said, hey, where's so-and-so? And she said, oh, no, he's got some family stuff. He's not going to be until noon today. So he never had a meeting to begin with. All it did was reinforce what I had already known about him. Move forward several years, and this individual did some things, and they ended up getting transferred to another division. Eventually, ended up leaving the organization. But we were having to do these daily reports that we were sending in and to our GM and VP. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, we're sending you daily and weekly reports. Are those reports giving you what you need? Because we've never got feedback on them. And he started laughing. He said, I don't get a daily report. I don't get a weekly report. And the reports I get, I ask for them specifically, and you all send them to me. So the team had spent hundreds of hours over time, probably thousands of hours over time, creating these reports and sending them in just to satisfy the ego of an inconsistent leadership. Now, do you think any of us trusted that individual? Do you think that any of us were going to give him more than bare minimum? Well, if we're bringing that same level of inconsistency, how do we expect our teams to trust us? How do we expect our teams to lean in and give us their absolute best? How do we then become that consistent leader, right? Because it doesn't matter how good you are occasionally. If we're consistently unstable, the team can't trust us. And if the team can't trust us, they can't trust the environment. They can't trust the mission. They can't trust the overarching why. So how do we fix inconsistency? How do we become the consistent leader? How do we become the kind of leader that shows up with steady hands and a trustworthy voice? Leaders that the teams know are not going to react to whatever stimuli is hitting at the moment. That is not going to approach everything from whatever emotional angle is hitting at that time. Because we've had leaders. I've had leaders. In fact, I'm sure at times I've been that leader that allowed the pressures and stresses of life and different things that are happening outside of work to impact how I responded and reacted at work. In fact, I know I have, because I make it a practice that if I do slip, I turn around and I go and I find the individuals and I apologize. And I endeavor not to do that again. So how do we become consistent leaders? There's 4 practical tools that I've discovered. 1, know your core values. We've talked about this in the first couple of sessions. Know your core values. Let them guide your every decision. If your every decision is based on your core, then you're going to be consistent. But if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, there will be absolutely zero consistency within your decisions, within your conversations, within your leadership. And if there's no consistency, because there's no core foundation you're standing on, then your teams can't trust you. And if your teams can't trust you, then you have nothing to build off of. Right? So if you don't know what you stand for, your team will never be able to know what you stand for. And they will never know how to approach you. And they'll never be able to give you that above and beyond. You'll always get bare minimum based off exactly what you've asked. I was talking to a man the other day, and we were talking about, he's retired now. We were talking about a company that he worked for. And he was a hard worker, right? He's very strong. He was very approaching work, and he would help whoever needed help. And then he got a new boss that come in, and the new boss got on to him for something and told him that what he was doing, that he needed to not worry about that because he didn't have a PhD, he didn't have all these different things. So the man said, "Fine, okay, I'll get it. I will stay in my lane." So then he started doing his job, and he focused just on his job. And then eventually the manager came and said, "Hey, why are you not helping so-and-so when you need them, when you see that they need help? Why are you not going to these other departments and doing the stuff that you've always done?" He said, "Because you told me to stay in my lane." He said, "Well, I didn't mean that. You still have to be a team player." He said, "Well, I can't be a team player and meet your expectation of staying in my lane over here, because you want me to help when it's convenient for you to help. But when there's some other agenda going on I don't know about and I step out, you slap me and I come back over into my lane. So the inconsistency of the core values of the team, which was team value, team participation, which was team attitude, team mentality, helping one another, supporting one another, was undermined because a manager got upset and just started making rules off of, just off of a whim or off of the emotion. And it caused the team, because not just this one individual, but the entire team began to pull back. And no one knew when they were supposed to help or when they weren't supposed to help, because when they would try, when they would done what they'd done for years with the new manager, suddenly sometimes it was right, sometimes it was wrong. So since the team didn't know what the expectations of the manager was, then they weren't able then to give their very best, and they weren't able to build any synergies among themselves. So as a leader, understand who you are. Clarify your non-negotiables. What will you not check? What will you not sacrifice no matter what? What will you not sacrifice just to satisfy your own ego or your own pride or your own emotion at that moment, or that goal that has been thrown out there? Second, build healthy leadership rhythms. Create structure. Keep your check-ins and communicate steady. Predictability breeds safety. I probably struggle with that more than anything, right? Because even when I would get the rhythm going with the teams, I would get caught up in so many other things that I would start skipping meetings. I would start pushing the check-ins, right? And it'd just be a quick message of, hey, you have anything to talk about today? And they're like, well, no, not really. So, okay, so we would cancel it. So all I did with that was tell them, I really don't care, right? And since I didn't care, why should they care? Which that leads right to number 3, stop over-promising. Be honest about what you can and what you cannot deliver. As a leader, there's a lot of times you don't own your calendar, right? So if you don't build barriers, if you don't build margin into your calendar, then you won't be able to adjust and absorb that above and beyond from outside that's pushed on you. You won't be able to step up and handle these extra tasks as they come in, because even if you're going to delegate them, you still have to process them, and you still have to follow up on them. You still have to build the expectation for the teams that you're going to delegate them to. And all of that takes time. All that takes energy. So understand what you can and what you cannot deliver, because your word is your leadership currency. So guard it, and guard it ferociously. 4, invite accountability. Don't try to lead alone. Surround yourself with people who can help you stay aligned, even when it's hard. People you trust, people you understand and know that are going to give you the right feedback, not because it's convenient for them, not because they're trying to manipulate you, and not because they're trying to hurt you, but because they understand the mission and the goal and the why, and they're going to give you the feedback of where your actions, your inconsistencies, your communications, or whatever it may be, are undermining those goals. So let me ask you this, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself as you answer this. Would the people around you describe you as steady? Would they say you're reliable? Would they say you're unpredictable? How about would they say, who's that? Don't kid yourself. Those answers are important. You need to understand, because their perception is your reality. And if their perception is not what you think you're doing and not who you think you are, then you have to understand why. There's something that you're doing, something you're saying, something that you're being inconsistent in that is putting that image out there. That's placed that image and fed it within them. And only you can fix it. Remember, you don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be dependable. Consistency, it's not about perfection. It's all about alignment. It's about showing up again and again and again in a way that reinforces your values, even when it's inconvenient. It's about leading with stability, not emotional highs and lows, because in the long run, consistency is what creates safety. And safety is what allows people to grow under your leadership. Are you people growing? Are you growing? If not, you can make the choice. You can make the change. You can make the difference. So with that, thank you for being with me today for episode 4 of Lead Well, Live Whole. If this one challenged you, you're not alone, believe me. We're all growing, we're all evolving, and all being invited into deeper alignment. So do the internal work, own your growth, and keep showing up with integrity. But please make sure to subscribe and to share this with another leader who might need it. And join us next week for another episode of Lead Well, Live Whole. Until then, remember, you're built to serve, you're made to thrive. Lead well, live whole. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Lead Well, Live Whole. If this added value to your journey, share it with a friend and subscribe. Until next time, lead those you serve well and live your life whole.